Have you ever felt the weight of loneliness grow heavier with each passing day, until it becomes as real as the chain around your neck? I remember every cold night in that backyard in Detroit, every storm I couldn't escape from, every passerby who looked away. The heavy chain that kept me tethered to a rusty pole had worn away my fur, leaving raw skin underneath that stung in the rain. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the emptiness of being forgotten. I wasn't always a backyard dog. Once I had a warm bed inside a house, a family who called me their sweet boy, and children who would giggle as I gently played with them. My broad pit bull smile and wagging tail earned me treats and belly rubs, and my natural protective instincts made them feel safe. I was their guardian, their friend, their family member, until everything changed. The backyard became my prison gradually. First, it was just during the day while they were at work. Then it stretched into the nights because I was too energetic inside the house. The chain appeared next, a heavy, cold metal link that limited my world to a small circle around a metal pole. They said it was temporary, just until they could fix the fence. But days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The seasons changed around me, but my situation remained the same. Summer brought scorching heat and thirst, when my water bowl would sit empty for days. Fall scattered leaves I couldn't chase. Winter's bitter winds cut through my fur, and the snow piled up around me, leaving me shivering in the small circle I could reach. Spring's mud turned my restricted space into a mess I couldn't escape. Other dogs would pass by with their families, walking on leashes, well-groomed and loved. I would try to call out to them, but my once strong bark had become weak from disuse and despair. The chain would rattle when I moved, a constant reminder of my imprisonment. Some dogs would look at me with pity, while others would look away quickly, as if my fate might somehow be contagious. The neighbors' cats would sometimes venture close enough to taunt me, knowing exactly how far my chain would allow me to go. They would sit just beyond my reach, grooming themselves lazily, while I could barely move without the metal links biting into my neck. Their freedom was a cruel reminder of what I had lost, of the life I used to have. My food bowl, when they remembered to fill it, sat at the edge of my reach. Sometimes I would have to stretch the chain to its limit just to eat, the metal digging into my neck with every bite. The plastic bowl had cracked from exposure to the elements, and rainwater would mix with the kibble, turning it into an unappetizing mush that I ate only to survive. The house that was once my home became a distant dream. Through the windows, I could see lights on at night, could hear the sounds of the family living their lives. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of them moving about, and my tail would wag hopefully, remembering the days when I was part of that warmth. But they rarely looked out at me anymore. The children who once played with me grew older and stopped coming outside altogether. Their bikes rusted beside the garage, abandoned like me. I remembered how careful I had been with them when they were small, how I would let them pull my ears and hug me too tight because I understood they were just learning. Now they hurried past me when they had to cross the yard, as if I were a stranger. The isolation began to change me. My once shiny coat became dull and matted. The muscles that had made me strong and athletic began to waste away from lack of exercise. Even my eyes, which used to shine with enthusiasm for life, grew dim with hopelessness. The cheerful, gentle dog I had been was fading away, replaced by a shadow chained to a pole. Nights were the worst, especially during storms. The thunder would crash overhead, and I had nowhere to hide, no comfort to seek. The rain would soak through my fur, and the wind would whip around me mercilessly. My shelter, a leaning plywood box that barely kept out the elements, offered little protection against nature's fury. The neighborhood changed around me as I remained static in my chain's circular prison. New families moved in, others moved out. Sometimes people would stop and stare, their faces showing concern or disgust, but they always moved on. I learned not to get my hopes up when someone paused by the fence, learned not to expect salvation from the occasional sympathetic glance. My world shrank to the circumference of my chain, roughly 15 feet around the metal pole. I knew every inch of this circle. The bare patches where grass refused to grow, the divot I'd worn in the ground from pacing, the exact reach of my chain in every direction. This limited space became my entire universe, my boundaries both physical and psychological. Time lost all meaning in my chained existence. Days blurred together in an endless cycle of hope and disappointment. Each morning I would watch the back door, remembering how it used to open for me, how I used to bound inside to greet my family. Now it remained closed, a barrier between the life I once had and the life I was forced to live. The sounds of the neighborhood became my only connection to the wider world. Children playing in distant yards, cars driving past, doors slamming, and voices carrying on the wind, all reminders of the life continuing beyond my reach. I would strain to see past my boundaries, my chain rattling with each movement, a metallic soundtrack to my solitude. Other dogs in the neighborhood would bark conversations to each other, but I gradually stopped joining in. What was there to say? How could I participate in their discussions of walks and games and love when my only story was one of abandonment? My silence became another chain, one forged from hopelessness rather than metal. The physical toll of being chained was visible in my body. The raw ring around my neck, the calluses from lying on hard ground, the way my muscles had atrophied from disuse. But the emotional wounds ran deeper. Each ignored whimper, each unanswered plea for attention, each day of neglect carved new scars into my spirit. The family's routines became a cruel clockwork that rarely included me. They would come and go, cars pulling in and out of the driveway, voices and laughter floating out from open windows. Sometimes they would have parties in the backyard, guests carefully avoiding looking at the chained dog in the corner, as if I were a shameful secret best ignored. My existence had become a testament to human indifference. How easy it was for people to look away, to pretend not to see suffering right in front of them. I watched countless people pass by, their eyes sliding past me as if I were invisible. But then one day, something changed. Someone new walked past our fence, and unlike all the others, she stopped. She really looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw something I had almost forgotten existed: compassion. The chain had become more than just metal links. It was a constant reminder of my imprisonment, weighing heavier on my spirit with each passing day. The worn circle of dirt around my pole told the story of countless loops walked in desperation, each circuit wearing away at both the ground and my hope. My neck had long since lost its fur where the chain rubbed, leaving sensitive skin that stung in the rain and burned in the sun. Even my dreams were haunted by the sound of metal links dragging across the ground. Winter was approaching again, and I could feel it in my bones. The metal of my chain grew colder each night, stealing what little warmth my body managed to generate. My makeshift shelter, now leaning more than ever, offered little protection from the bitter wind. The family had stopped filling my water bowl regularly, and I watched helplessly as it froze and thawed, often remaining empty for days at a time. Food had become increasingly scarce, as the family seemed to forget about me more and more. Sometimes I would go days without eating, watching through the windows as they sat down to their meals together. The hunger was a constant companion, almost as faithful as the chain itself. My ribs, once hidden beneath muscle and healthy fur, now pressed visibly against my skin, a testament to neglect. The neighborhood cats had grown bolder, knowing I was too weak to chase them even if I could reach them. They would sit just beyond my chain's reach, mockingly cleaning themselves or napping in the sun. One particularly cruel orange tabby would bring his caught mice close to my boundary, eating them slowly while watching me with gleaming eyes. Even the birds seemed to know my limitations, hopping carelessly within what had once been my territory. My body, once strong and athletic, had betrayed me through forced inactivity. My muscles had wasted away, and my joints ached from sleeping on the hard ground. Standing up became an effort, each movement accompanied by the familiar weight of the chain and the pain of stiff limbs. The proud pit bull stance I once carried had given way to a hunched, defensive posture. The family's children, now teenagers, had completely stopped acknowledging my existence. They would walk past me to their cars, phones in hand, not even glancing in my direction. I remembered how they used to climb on me, how carefully I would play with them, how their laughter used to fill me with joy. Now they treated me like a ghost, a reminder of something they'd rather forget. Rainstorms became torture sessions that I couldn't escape. The chain prevented me from finding proper shelter, forcing me to endure whatever weather came my way. My fur, matted and dirty, had lost its ability to repel water effectively. Each storm left me shivering and soaked, huddled against the pole that had become both my anchor and my prison. The sounds of other dogs living their lives tormented me daily. I could hear them barking excitedly for walks, playing in their yards, receiving love and attention from their families. My own voice had grown hoarse from disuse, my once strong bark reduced to a weak whimper. Even my attempts to communicate with passing dogs had dwindled, as if the chain had somehow bound my spirit as well as my body. My circle of existence had become smaller as my strength decreased. Where once I could at least patrol the full reach of my chain, now I spent most of my time huddled close to the pole. The effort of moving the heavy links had become too much for my weakened body. My world had shrunk to just a few feet of bare earth, marked by my own desperate pacing. Sleep offered little escape from my reality. My dreams were filled with memories of running free, of warm beds and gentle hands, only to wake to the cold bite of the chain and the emptiness of abandonment. Each morning brought the same view, the same restrictions, the same growing despair. The days began to blur together in an endless cycle of loneliness and neglect. The family's routines continued around me as if I didn't exist. They would host barbecues in the backyard, their guests carefully avoiding looking in my direction. The smell of cooking food would torture me as I lay forgotten in my corner, my empty bowl a silent testament to their indifference. Even the smoke from their grills seemed to avoid my corner of the yard, as if I were already a ghost. Time became meaningless, marked only by the changing of seasons and the gradual deterioration of my body and spirit. The chain grew heavier as I grew weaker, its links carrying the weight of countless ignored pleas for attention, for mercy, for simple kindness. My existence had become a study in endurance, in surviving despite being forgotten. The physical pain was constant, but almost secondary to the emotional torture. Every time the back door opened, my heart would leap with hope, only to crash again as they passed by without a glance. Each ignored whimper, each unanswered plea for attention, carved new wounds into my already scarred spirit. The chain around my neck was nothing compared to the invisible bonds of rejection that held me. My efforts to maintain my dignity gradually faded. Where once I would try to keep myself clean, now my fur hung in dirty mats. The circle of bare earth around my pole had become muddy with waste, as I couldn't move far enough away from my sleeping spot. The pride I once carried as a loyal family protector had been replaced by a deep shame that I couldn't understand or escape. The isolation began to affect my mind in strange ways. I started to forget what it felt like to be touched with kindness, to hear my name spoken with love. The memories of my life before the chain began to feel like dreams, too good to have been real. My world had narrowed to the present moment, each one filled with the weight of the chain and the emptiness of abandonment. Other people would sometimes stop by the fence, their faces showing concern or disgust. Some would take pictures with their phones, others would shake their heads and hurry past. A few would call out to me softly, but they always moved on. Each interaction was a brief reminder that I was still visible to the outside world, though not visible enough for anyone to help. The chain had rubbed my neck raw again, the constant irritation a source of never-ending discomfort. The metal links, rusted from exposure to rain and snow, left orange stains on my fur that spread like a disease. Every movement brought pain. Every shift of position reminded me of my captivity. Even the simple act of lying down had become an exercise in finding the least painful position. The worst part wasn't the physical discomfort or even the loneliness. It was the gradual loss of hope. Each sunrise brought another day of being ignored, another day of struggling to find a reason to keep going. The chain seemed to grow heavier with each passing hour, as if it were slowly pulling me down into the earth itself. My will to live was fading as surely as my strength. The sound of the chain dragging across the ground had become the soundtrack of my existence, a constant metallic reminder of my imprisonment. It rang out with every movement, drowning out the memories of kinder sounds, of children's laughter, of loving voices, of the word "good boy" spoken with affection. The chain song was a dirge for the dog I used to be. Then came the day that changed everything. The woman who had stopped at the fence returned, but this time she wasn't alone. Through my haze of hopelessness, I heard new voices, saw more people gathering. They spoke in angry, urgent tones, pointing at my chain, at my condition, at the house. For the first time in as long as I could remember, people weren't looking away. They were really seeing me. The day of my rescue began like any other, cold, lonely, hopeless. But something was different in the air. A tension I could feel even through my fog of resignation. More people were gathering at the fence, their voices carrying anger and purpose rather than the usual pity or indifference. Through my one good eye, I watched as they pointed cameras at me, at my chain, at the deplorable conditions I'd been living in. The woman who had first noticed me was leading the group, her voice firm and determined as she spoke into a phone. Police cars arrived, their lights flashing silently, followed by a van marked with animal rescue logos. My heart began to beat faster, though I didn't dare to hope. Too many people had come and gone before, leaving me still chained to my pole. My family finally emerged from the house, their voices raised in argument with the gathered crowd. I could hear them making excuses about how they were going to fix things, how they just needed more time, how I was too strong to be inside. The same promises they'd been making to themselves for years, the lies they told to justify my imprisonment. But this time, something was different. This time, no one was accepting their excuses. The rescue team approached slowly, led by the woman who had started it all. They spoke softly, their voices gentle, but their eyes filled with a determination I hadn't seen before. I wanted to wag my tail, to show them I could still be friendly, but years of neglect had stolen my confidence. All I could manage was a slight thump against the ground, a weak signal that I hadn't completely given up. One of the rescuers knelt near me, just outside my circle of reach. She held out her hand, palm up, letting me catch her scent. The gesture was so careful, so respectful of my space, that I felt something stir inside me, a memory of what it was like to be treated with kindness. My nose twitched, taking in her scent, searching for any hint of threat or deception. The police officers were speaking with my family, their voices carrying authority I hadn't heard directed at them before. Papers were being shown, voices raised and lowered, but through it all, the rescuers kept their focus on me. One of them had brought water, holding a bowl just within my reach. The water was clean and cool. Such a simple thing, but it felt like a miracle after so long drinking from my dirty, often empty bowl. Then came the moment that changed everything. The sound of metal on metal, but different from my chain's familiar rattle. Through my matted fur and exhaustion, I saw them approaching with tools. The woman who had found me spoke softly, explaining each move before they made it. "We're going to get this chain off you now," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You'll never be chained again." The bolt cutters looked threatening, and I flinched when they brought them near. But their hands were steady, their movements careful and precise. The sound of metal cutting through metal rang out in the yard, and suddenly, for the first time in years, the weight around my neck began to loosen. The chain, my constant companion and tormentor, fell away piece by piece. Freedom came in stages. First, the heavy links falling away from my neck, revealing skin rubbed raw by years of friction. Then gentle hands examining my wounds, touching me with such care that I hardly felt their contact. The rescuers worked methodically, documenting everything with cameras and notepads, but their touch never stopped being gentle. A soft blanket appeared, warm and clean, so different from the hard ground I'd grown used to. They wrapped it around me carefully, providing the comfort I'd been denied for so long. The woman who had found me stayed close, her presence a constant reassurance as others worked around us. Her voice became my anchor in the chaos of activity, steady and soothing. Standing was difficult. My muscles had grown weak from disuse, and my joints were stiff from exposure to cold and damp. But the rescuers were patient, supporting my weight as I found my feet. Each step away from my pole felt impossible, like breaking the bonds of gravity itself. The chain lay abandoned on the ground, its power over me finally broken. The journey to the rescue van was slow, each step uncertain after years of restricted movement. The rescuers never rushed me, letting me set the pace, supporting me when my legs trembled. The distance to the van seemed immense after years of living in a 15-foot circle, but with each step I was leaving my prison behind. Inside the van, everything was soft and warm. They had prepared a bed of blankets, creating a nest of comfort I had almost forgotten could exist. The woman who had found me climbed in beside me, her hand resting gently on my back. The doors closed, shutting out the sight of my former home, the chain, the pole, my past. The engine started and we began to move away. As we drove, the rescuers spoke softly about my future, about medical care, rehabilitation, and something called foster home. Their voices were full of hope and determination, emotions I had almost forgotten existed. The woman beside me kept her hand on my fur, as if ensuring I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Each mile we traveled put more distance between me and that chain. At the veterinary hospital, more gentle hands examined me. They found all the evidence of my neglect, the sores around my neck, the muscle atrophy, the malnutrition. But they also found something else, a spark of life that hadn't quite been extinguished. "He's a fighter," they said, their voices full of admiration. "He never gave up." The first night of freedom was overwhelming. Clean blankets, fresh water always within reach, and most importantly, no chain. The hospital staff checked on me regularly, their voices soft, their movements careful. Every time they approached, they made sure I saw them coming, giving me choice and control I hadn't had in years. The woman who had saved me visited every day during my recovery. She would sit beside my bed, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes just being present. Her voice became a constant in my new world, as steady and reassuring as the chain had been restrictive and cruel. She talked about a home where I would be safe, where chains would never touch me again. News of my rescue spread, and more people came to visit. Reporters with cameras, other rescue workers, even children who brought handmade cards. But the hospital staff protected me, ensuring I wasn't overwhelmed, allowing me to set the boundaries of interaction. For the first time in years, my comfort was someone's priority. The legal proceedings continued in the background, my former family facing charges, new laws being discussed, my story becoming part of a larger conversation about animal welfare. But in my hospital bed, surrounded by gentle care and kindness, those details seemed distant and unimportant. What mattered was that the chain was gone, and it was never coming back. Each day brought new progress, small victories that the hospital staff celebrated with genuine joy. The first time I wagged my tail properly, the first time I walked the length of the hallway without tiring, the first time I played with a soft toy they had brought me. Each step forward was a step further from the chained existence I had known. Recovery was a journey measured in small victories and gentle revelations. The first time I felt grass under my paws during a supervised walk in the hospital's garden, I froze, overwhelmed by the sensation I had been denied for so long. The woman who had saved me, Marie, I learned was her name, waited patiently while I processed this simple freedom. She had become my constant companion, my guide in this new, unchained world. Physical therapy began slowly, helping my wasted muscles remember their strength. The veterinary staff worked with me daily, using treats and gentle encouragement to help me rebuild what years of chain-bound confinement had stolen. My walks grew longer, my movements more confident. Each day brought new challenges, but also new achievements, each one celebrated by the team supporting my recovery. The wounds around my neck began to heal, first slowly growing back over the raw skin that the chain had left behind. The staff applied soothing medications and kept the area clean, their touches always gentle and predictable. I learned that hands approaching my neck didn't have to mean pain or restraint. They could bring comfort and healing instead. Marie visited every day, often bringing new things for me to experience. Soft toys I could actually play with, special foods to help me gain weight, and most importantly, her unwavering patience and love. She would sit with me for hours, sometimes just talking, other times teaching me simple commands that came with rewards instead of restrictions. Through her, I began to remember what trust felt like. Other dogs at the hospital became my friends and teachers. There was a gentle golden retriever recovering from surgery who showed me how to play again, and a senior beagle who taught me that humans could be trusted to bring food regularly. Watching them interact confidently with the staff helped me understand that my past experiences weren't normal, that dogs were meant to be loved, not chained. The hospital staff worked on more than just my physical recovery. They helped me overcome my fear of sudden movements, my anxiety about being approached, my hesitation to trust. Every person who handled me was careful to telegraph their movements, to speak softly, to respect my boundaries. Slowly, the defensive behaviors I had developed during my chained years began to fade. My appetite returned as my body healed, and with it came strength I had forgotten I possessed. The ribs that had pressed so visibly against my skin began to disappear under healthy muscle and flesh. My coat, properly nourished and regularly groomed, started to shine again. Even my eyes, once dull with hopelessness, began to show signs of the spirited dog I had once been. Marie started bringing me to her home for short visits, helping me adjust to life outside the hospital. Her house was nothing like my previous home. Here, every room was accessible to me, every door open, every space designed with my comfort in mind. The first time I saw her backyard, I froze in fear, expecting to see a chain and pole. Instead, I found a peaceful garden with soft grass and sunny spots for napping. Learning to play again was a gradual process. Marie would sit on the floor with me, gently rolling balls or squeaking toys, never pushing me to respond. The first time I picked up a toy on my own, her delighted laugh triggered something in my memory, a reminder of joy I had almost forgotten. Play, I discovered, was a language of freedom and trust. The concept of doors being opportunities rather than barriers took time to understand. In Marie's home, I was allowed to go in and out as I pleased, to choose where I wanted to rest, to move freely between rooms. The simple act of walking through a doorway without restriction became a powerful symbol of my new life. Even more amazing was that I could always come back inside. I was never locked out. Sleep came easier in my new life, though nightmares of the chain still haunted me sometimes. On those nights, Marie would sit beside my bed, her presence a quiet reminder that I was safe now. My bed, an actual, soft, warm bed, became my sanctuary, a place where I could rest without fear of rain or cold or loneliness. Other people began to visit me at Marie's house, carefully screened friends who understood my history and respected my needs. Each new person was introduced slowly, allowing me to approach them in my own time. Many brought treats or toys, but more importantly, they brought patience and understanding. Through these interactions, I learned that not all humans would hurt or abandon me. Exercise became a daily joy rather than a restricted struggle. Marie would take me for walks in quiet areas, gradually increasing the distance as my strength returned. Unlike the endless circles I had worn into the ground around my pole, these walks had purpose and variety. We explored new paths, met friendly dogs, and always returned home to comfort and safety. The physical changes in my body were matched by changes in my spirit. Where once I had been silent and withdrawn, I began to find my voice again. Not in desperate barks of loneliness, but in playful woofs of joy or gentle rumbles of contentment. My tail, which had hung limp for so long, remembered how to wag with genuine happiness. Marie worked from home, which meant I was never alone for long periods. She set up a comfortable spot for me near her desk, where I could watch her work or nap in patches of sunlight. The sound of her typing became as comforting as her voice, a constant reminder that I was part of a home now, not a forgotten fixture in a backyard. The legal case against my former family concluded with them being banned from owning animals and required to pay for my medical care. Marie attended every court session, though I didn't have to. She would come home afterward and assure me that justice had been served, that no other dog would suffer my fate in that backyard. Her determination to protect others like me became part of my healing. My story, shared through the rescue organization's social media, helped change local laws about chaining dogs. Marie would sometimes take me to events where she spoke about animal welfare, though she never forced me to interact if I wasn't comfortable. My presence, she said, helped people understand why chains were cruel. My suffering had become a force for positive change. As my confidence grew, I discovered a talent for gentleness that surprised everyone. Despite my size and strength, I was especially careful with children who visited. Perhaps it was a memory of my own past, when I had been a family dog who played carefully with little ones. This gentle nature led to a new role, helping other rescue dogs learn to trust again. Each day brought new experiences and small victories. I learned that cars meant adventures, not abandonment. That raised voices didn't always mean danger, that food would always be available, water would always be clean, and comfort would always be offered. Most importantly, I learned that love, once given freely, could heal even the deepest wounds. The chain that had defined my existence for so long became nothing more than a painful memory. In its place, I found the invisible but unbreakable bonds of trust and love, bonds that lifted me up instead of holding me down. Marie's dedication to my recovery never wavered, and through her patience and care, I became more than just a survivor. I became whole again. Looking back now from my favorite spot on Marie's couch, the memories of that chain feel like a different lifetime. The thick scar around my neck has faded, hidden beneath healthy fur, but it serves as a reminder of how far I've come. Sometimes Marie's fingers brush against it while she's petting me, and I feel her touch gentle over that spot, as if she's trying to erase the pain of those years with her love. The contrast between my past and present life still amazes me, how a simple act of compassion could change everything. My days are now filled with the simple joys I was once denied. The freedom to move as I please, the comfort of a soft bed, the security of regular meals and fresh water. The back door stays open during nice weather, letting me choose when to go outside and when to come back in. No more endless circles around a metal pole, no more sleeping in the rain, no more wondering if anyone would remember to feed me. Each of these simple freedoms feels like a miracle after years of restriction. The neighborhood where I live now is different too, full of people who smile when they see me on my walks with Marie, children who ask politely if they can pet me, other dogs who greet me as a friend rather than a prisoner. I've become known as the gentle giant of the block, the big pit bull with the soft eyes and waggy tail. Nobody sees the scars or the past anymore. They just see me, the dog I was always meant to be. My story has become part of something bigger than myself. Marie takes me to schools and community events where she educates people about animal cruelty and the importance of taking action. I stand beside her, living proof that rescue and rehabilitation work, that second chances can lead to beautiful transformations. Each person who hears our story becomes another potential hero for a dog in need, another pair of eyes that might notice and stop to help. The chain that once bound me has been transformed into a symbol of hope. Marie keeps a single link in her office, not to remember the cruelty, but to remind herself and others that change is possible when people choose to get involved. That piece of metal that once represented my prison now serves as a catalyst for action, inspiring others to speak up when they see animals suffering, to be the voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. My relationship with Marie has deepened into something beautiful and profound. She is more than just my rescuer. She is my partner in healing, my guide to trust, my proof that humans can be worthy of a dog's love. Each morning when I wake up beside her bed, each time she comes home and her face lights up at seeing me, each gentle touch and kind word reinforces what I now know to be true. I am home. I am loved. I am free. The physical scars may remain, but they no longer define me. My muscles are strong again, my coat shines with health, and my eyes reflect the joy I feel in my new life. The chain took years from me, but it couldn't take my capacity to love, to trust, to find happiness again. Through Marie's patience and dedication, I've discovered that healing is possible, that past trauma doesn't have to determine future happiness. My mission now is to help other dogs who have suffered as I did. When Marie fosters rescued dogs, I show them by example that they can trust again, that humans can be kind, that life can be good. Each scared dog who learns to wag their tail, each abused animal who discovers joy again, is a victory we share. My past has become a bridge to help others find their way to better futures. The woman who stopped at that fence and chose to take action changed more than just my life. She created ripples of compassion that continue to spread. Local laws about chaining dogs have been strengthened, more people are reporting animal abuse, and countless dogs have been saved because my story opened eyes and hearts. One person's courage to stop and help became a movement of awareness and action. From the depths of neglect to the heights of love, My journey has become a testament to the power of compassion in action. The chain that was meant to confine me instead became the catalyst for change, proving that even the darkest situations can lead to light when someone cares enough to help. Through Marie's love and dedication, I've learned that freedom isn't just about being unchained. It's about having the chance to become the dog I was always meant to be and helping others find their way to freedom too.